Oh man, that's a very, very loaded question, but I love answering it.
Hmm.
So of course I'm like, and I was like any other teenager experimenting with substances. I wasn't a big fan of alcohol, and I
Hmm.
of course tried smoking weed when I was a teenager. But one of the times that I was smoking weed as a teenager, my mom caught me. And my mom
Oh.
is an immigrant and she is from Pakistan. So yeah,
Shit.
she was extremely strict, and when she caught me, she was she was quite upset. But she's a clinical researcher at a cancer hospital out here, and she was really curious about cannabis in general, just because she heard it, a lot of her cancer patients were using it.
Hmm.
So instead of like reprimanding me or yelling at me or even beating me, she asked like, why am I doing this? Like, she's like, you're not at a party, you're not with friends, like why are you smoking alone right now in your room? So I kind of laid down some of the points as to why I wasn't feeling well, or I was like, I gave her some explanation, and she said, you know what, you write me a report, give me medical journal citations, you need to show me why this is, an okay thing that you're doing. She said, I won't allow you to do it until you're 18, but tell me why, and we'll see. So I was scared, like, oh, okay, all right, I don't want to get
Yeah, I can
grounded, I got to
imagine.
write a report. I wrote her like a 20-page report, I put all these citations, and when I presented it to her, she was very impressed. And she said, "This is a proper journal. Like you've done like a proper literature review of why cannabis is not harmful." And she was so impressed to the point that she invited me to the hospital that she works at. I was volunteering there too,
Hmm.
and she told me to talk to some of her patients that are interested in cannabis. And I was I was actually a high school dropout at the time, and I set up a presentation for the first time. I was 17, and a few patients showed up. I and two doctors. They showed
Hmm.
up, and I explained about cannabis therapeutics for cancer patients. I talked about how it's helpful for patients dealing with chemotherapy, how it can help them reduce symptoms or side effects of chemotherapy. And it was a very impressive thing for my mom to see. I was
Hmm.
already being a bad student, being a bad kid, but she saw a passion like develop in me from that point. She truly sparked
Yeah.
my interest and motivated me to look into something that is otherwise taboo, especially, in that immigrant household, being a first generation American. It's like, already there's the pressures of trying to fit in both sides and playing a balancing act. But,
Yeah.
you know, her being an academic, she truly like, encouraged me to look at it from the perspective of an academic, of a scientist. And I did, like, I that was, that set forth my career. I immediately got a job at a dispensary as soon as I turned 18, at a medical dispensary. And of course, during those times, it was the wild, wild west. There was no, there were no solid regulations in place for cannabis
Like
at
people
that
thought you were a
time.
glorified drug dealer, basically.
Exactly,
That's what it
but
was.
my mom did support me, and she's the only family I've got, so like it was very good to
Hmm.
have her support, and it's what set forth my career, and I didn't get in trouble.
That's a first. First of all, the fact that a non-Western parent didn't get you in trouble for that. Like I have experiences with that.
Right.
But second of all, just it basically threw you into your calling without you even knowing. Like you didn't know.
Yeah.
You're probably just doing it recreationally, just having fun. You didn't really do it for any other benefits, right? That you, I'm pretty sure at that age you didn't weren't
Yeah,
aware of
at
it.
that age, I wasn't focusing too much on the benefits. Like, I
No.
wasn't like, I did notice, like back then, like I was getting like sick a lot. Like I was getting the cold or the flu a lot, so I wasn't eating too
Hmm.
much. So one of my friends in high school was like, "Hey, you'll get the munchies if you smoke weed."
Hmm.
So I was really interested in the appetite inducing aspect of cannabis. That was
Yeah,
really the reason why I was smoking, because I wanted to eat more. Like people would ask me like, "Oh, are you anorexic?" And I'm like, "No, no, no. I'm
but
just getting sick too much and losing my appetite." So that's what I told my mom. I'm like, I instead of prescribing me medications like Depakote, that is an antidepressant, but also an appetite inducer. Like
mm,
I didn't need an antidepressant. I just needed an appetite inducer, and cannabis was really the best
it's
option at the
crazy. Yeah,
time. So
I'm with
yeah,
you on that. Like I just don't. It takes a lot for me to reach out to a medicine. Like that's I always try to find other ways, and this is
yeah.
where this why this industry is so lucrative right now. I think. Do you think like if your mom would have just reprimanded you and punished you and everything that you wouldn't be doing what you're doing, or you think that would have ended up happening anyway?
I think I would have still done it anyway. It probably wouldn't have been so academically fueled.
Mm-hmm.
I would have done it from maybe just a single perspective, just the entrepreneur approach, I suppose,
Hmm.
or even just say, "Hey, I just need a job, and I'll do it, and like I'll get a job in cannabis." But my mom like set forth the scientist in me and the
Hmm.
academic in me. Like it promoted me to or it encouraged me to study it rather than just make money from it.
Hmm.
So yeah, that's I credit her for the academic and science portion for sure.
And I assume that since you, and correct me if I'm wrong, but if you were a high school dropout, that means in the back of your mind, you probably always had this idea that you wanted to do your own thing. You wanted to go take your own path. Is that
Exactly.
true? Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. Like I did not like my experience in high school. I also felt it was too limiting, and I just wanted
Mm.
to hustle. I just wanted to like do some business, like sell things, or like basically that was teenage Maha like 10 years ago. I'm like I needed to sell stuff, but
Yeah.
I think my mom helped ground, like she didn't ground me, but she grounded me. Like she brought me back to earth and said, "You have a lot more potential in like with your academics. Like, fine, you dropped out, but I did end up going to community college and I did transfer to UCLA.
Yeah,
So
that's a big
I
deal.
did, yeah, yeah. I think I did prove to not just her, but to myself, like I should not stray away from the academic component. I should give
Hmm.
myself a chance. And it worked out. Going to UCLA was probably one of the best things that happened in my life. That's where I was able to start Canna Club. That is where it started and the movement started, and it's been going for
Hmm.
3-4 years now. So